please breathe.
Almost at the end of the nightmare, she finds forgiveness for herself. I did everything I could, she tells herself. Over and over. For a moment, this feels like the end for Mia. Let's dive into the story and explore its mystery. This story reveals that a terrible crisis had plagued Europe and neighboring states, and people didn't have access to basic necessities.
They exterminated the elderly to deal with the shortages.
Countries like Ireland had been able to bring the issue under control, but the Spanish government was having a hard time managing resources and providing for its people. The state had resorted to tyrannical ways when they realized that nothing could be done about the ongoing issues. Children and pregnant women were the first to be enlisted on the hit list.
Targeting pregnant women and kids. Don't you see it?
And that is when a huge chunk of the population started to leave the country. But it wasn't easy to do so through legal channels, and so people started resorting to other illegal means to escape the country and save their lives. Many grieving families joined the mass exodus, including a couple, Mia and Nico, who had lost their firstborn and were now attempting to save their unborn child.
Wow.
Nico knew that if he stayed in Spain, the government would take his wife away from him, just as they had taken their daughter, Uma, in the past. Mia blamed herself for what happened to Uma, even though Nico kept telling her it wasn't her fault. She had most likely been killed by the military, and both parents carried the guilt on their shoulders. Nico's plan was that they would be taken in a truck to the port, from where they would get onto a cargo ship and reach the shores of Ireland. But Nico and Mia got separated at the beginning of nowhere.
I was on this one with my wife. Get out! Get out!
And to make matters worse, before they arrive at the port, the military stop their respective container for checking.
Do it.
The military personnel kill everybody in Mia's container, though somehow she manages to hide by climbing over a wooden box where the officers can't see her. Mia tries to contact Nico so that she can tell him that even they would have to go through a security checkpoint where the officers are killing everybody. But unfortunately, she is not able to reach him. Finally, Mia's container is put on the ship. The ship on which she is on met with a storm, and the big iron containers started falling into the ocean. It is a horrifying sight when Mia peeps out of the hole and sees the containers floating in the water. Mia strands in the vast expanse of water, and all of a sudden Nico calls her, promising to rescue her. Mia goes into labor while she is inside that container, something she dreads from the very beginning. Mia gives birth to her daughter underwater during a storm. And for a moment, she thinks that she has lost her.
Oh, please breathe.
But the child is alive, and Mia does whatever she can to make the child comfortable. She names the child Noah. Mia is constantly pumping water out of the container, and even amidst such chaos, she makes sure that her baby girl is safe and warm. Mia eats whatever she can get in the container, and once that food is finished, she knows that she will have to improve and find ways to keep herself alive. Over the course of the trip, Mia sorts out all kinds of situations in order to survive. She eats her own placenta out of starvation. She is determined to survive for her daughter and manages to open a hole in the roof of the container, allowing her to send off SOS messages while floating in the middle of nowhere without any idea if help will arrive. She is stitching herself with wires after getting a deep cut on the leg and making a fishing net with multicolor earphones. She eats raw fish so that she has some sort of energy in her body. After nearly 3 weeks out at sea, she receives a phone call from Nico, who tells Mia he has been shot by the army and is going to die soon. Mia tells him of his daughter, and he tells her to continue fighting and that he will always be with them in spirit. Then the container starts to sink, and there comes a time when Mia has to climb on top and stay there with her daughter. Faced with certain death if she stays on the container, Mia constructs a small makeshift raft in the hopes of floating to a safe land for baby Noah. Noah's most critical point arrives when the container sinks, and suddenly Noah has disappeared from Mia's sight in the dark and misty night in the middle of the ocean. Luckily enough, a whale passing by splashes water on Noah's face and makes her cry, signaling her position to her mother. However, their situation is still quite precarious, as Mia is in the water in the cradle, just like Jack held to Rose's table in Titanic, and we know how that turned out. While drifting with no land in sight, Mia finally lets go of all of the regrets that were burdening her. Her pain comes from the loss of her other daughter, Uma. Almost at the end of the nightmare, she finds forgiveness for herself. "I did everything I could," she tells herself over and over. For a moment, this feels like the end for Mia. An Irish boat finds baby Noah floating in her cradle. As they get a hold of her, they notice a rope made of wires attached to the cradle that goes into the ocean. They pull, bringing Mia out of the water. Mia looks dead. She is not breathing. After a very long and intense CPR session, Mia wakes up. She's alive. Both of them are. Nowhere then concludes with Mia and Noah hugging and being safely brought to the shores of Ireland, just as originally intended. This is a survival story. This masterpiece has an IMDb rating of 6.3. We're glad you've been enjoying the story so far. Please join us for the next one. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. It motivates us greatly. Stay tuned.